Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ta'ala ala Sayyidina Muhammadin Noor wa ala Ahl al-Baytihi at-Tayyibin at-Tahirin. Amma ba'd. I do not doubt, as us believers, our sincerity in wanting to be close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And at the basic fundamental level, all of us are seeking happiness. But what does it mean to be happy? For me, it means that you have to be in search of and try to obey and be beloved to the Lord of happiness and the Creator of happiness, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the question is, then how do I become a person of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And the answer to this question is found in authentic Hadith in Tirmidhi, where the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam said, Ahlul Qur'an, Ahlullah, that the people of the Qur'an are the people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, how do we develop this relationship with the Qur'an? First and foremost, I think that while it is good intended, that this relationship that we have with the Qur'an nowadays, of this fearful distance relationship where we pick it up once or twice a week off the shelf, dust it off, and then deal with it in a very stiff way, is not the best way that we can deal with the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in fact, my urge and my plea and my call to you and to myself first and foremost is that we have to befriend the Qur'an. We have to become close with the Qur'an. We have to develop an intimate relationship with the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because in it is salvation, in it is guidance, and it's meant to be read, and it's meant to be pondered, and it's meant to be reflected upon. And there's more than 50 verses in the Qur'an that tell us to use our intellects. And so we need to use these intellects to reflect on the Qur'an, to reflect on its meanings, to imbibe from them, and to dress ourselves with the lessons that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to teach us. So the question is, how and in what way do I begin to read the Qur'an in a proper way? Because, like I said, we want to be Ahlullah, so we have to be Ahlul Qur'an. But then how do I develop that friendship and relationship with the Qur'an? There's an authentic hadith, mawquf, to Ibn Mas'ud, so a saying of Ibn Mas'ud, where he gives some recommendations on how to do tadabbur of Qur'an, how to reflect upon the Qur'an. But I think that if we take some of what he said as basic teachings, it will improve our reading of the Qur'an. First and foremost is to understand that it is not poetry. Do not read the Qur'an like it is poetry. Do not sing the Qur'an merely for melody and song. That's not the point. This is a book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the book of guidance. This is a book of salvation, where your akhirah is dependent on you knowing and following this book. So first and foremost, do not treat it like poetry. Give it respect. Sit down and try to read it with your heart. Which brings me to the second point, is what he said, to move with the verses. He said to let your heart move with the verses. So when something comes in the Qur'an, I want you to move with it. I want your heart to go where the ayah is taking you. I want you to be emotionally invested in the ayahs. Third of them is that you do not simply rush over the amazing parts of the Qur'an. If something amazing comes, sit back, reflect. There's a lesson in it for you to understand. Stop at its grammatical points. Stop at its lessons. Stop at the stories that it's telling you, because in it are tremendous and amazing lessons that one should try to just focus on and not rush over. Which brings me to the last point, which is, do not read the Qur'an rushing to the end of the surah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants excellent deeds, ahsan amala, as it says in Surah Al-Mulk. So it's not about how much Qur'an can you read. The question is, how much Qur'an can you live? And living the Qur'an requires you to read it with quality, not just quantity. It requires you to stop at its amazing points. It requires you to imbibe from its teachings. It requires you to have better adab with it than just treating it like it's poetry, but at the same time not keeping it a distance relationship, but living it and being a friend with the Qur'an. And my last advice to you and me is, I encourage you to go and buy your own mushaf. Go buy your own Qur'an and go around with that Qur'an. Whenever you read Qur'an, read that one. Develop a relationship with that particular mushaf, and you'll start to actually feel attached to it, which will help in the beginning stages of trying to befriend Qur'an. So I urge you and myself to become Ahlul Qur'an, so that we can become Ahlullah.
الآية والآية وبذا يسمو إيماني. داري يا نور هدايا أسري فيك إلى الغاية، أتلو الآية والآية وبذا يسمو إيماني.